In life, we all encounter obstacles, and those obstacles come in all different shapes, sizes, and forms. The question is, how do we handle those obstacles? Do we attack them head on, or do we allow them to make us quit? Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up on themselves, their dreams, or their goals. We will interview successful people from all walks of life as they share their no-quit stories when they had the choice to give up or give in, but they didn't. We thank you for listening, and we hope to be that jolt of positivity as you go for your greatness. Welcome to episode number 197 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is perseverance. Our quote of the day comes to us from Thomas Fowle Buxton. With ordinary talent and extraordinary perseverance, all things are attainable. Today's episode is sponsored by the good people over at West Fair Communications, who publish the Westchester County Business Journal and the Fairfield County Business Journal. These newspapers do a wonderful job in covering all aspects of the business world within two of the most influential markets in the New York metropolitan area. You can also take advantage of their daily news feeds, which keep track on the companies and thought leaders in these important regions. For more information, take a look at www.westfaironline.com. Trust me, once you start reading, you won't quit. It's a complete honor to bring you another episode featuring a United States Olympian. When it comes to Ruben Gonzalez, I think the word perseverance fits him perfectly. As the only Olympian to compete in 4 different decades, and yes, you heard that right, he is also attempting to compete in the 2022 Olympics, which would be his 5th decade. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Ruben, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Hey, Christopher, thanks for having me, man. It's great to be on your show.
I appreciate it. So the first question we ask everybody is, are you ready to bring it today?
Absolutely. Let's do it. I'm always ready.
I knew that would be your answer. So as we were talking about before we went live, is the number one objective of our show is to motivate and inspire our listeners to never give up. And I was curious if you had either a personal story of perseverance or perhaps a really challenging time that tested you and you could have given up or given in, but you didn't.
Gosh, so many. Life is a series of storms. And I always tell my kids, you're going to be knocked down on your knees, but you're going to dust yourself off, pick yourself up, and get back in the game, because that's what champions do. When I first went to Lake Placid, I was 21 years old. I'm a bench warmer in my college soccer team. I've got a lot of heart, but no body to go with it. And I see Scott Hamilton win the gold medal in figure skating at the Olympics. And he inspired me. I thought, if that little tiny guy can win, I can at least play. I lived in Houston at the time. I didn't even know what snow looked like, but I decided to take on the sport of luge. And I went to Lake Placid, and it was brutal. They had to compress. They had to compress 10 years of luge training into 2 years, because the next 2 years I would have to compete internationally to try to be in the top 50 in the world if I wanted to qualify. Well, they told me ahead of time, you're going to break a lot of bones. If you want to do it at your age, you want to do it in just 4 years, it's going to be brutal. But I went in with the mindset that a broken bone is a temporary inconvenience, because bones heal and they'll be stronger later. And so I put on my mental armor and I went ready to fight. And I did break several bones because they rushed me through the process. And so the first 2 years were a physical challenge. And then the next 2 years were a psychological challenge, because imagine, my level of luging at that time, it's like I just got my driver's permit. And now imagine that they put somebody like that in a room with Mario Andretti and AJ Foyt and all these great racing champions, and you're going to go race an Indy 500. I mean, I felt like I didn't belong. And so that was a very psychological challenge too. But my mindset was, I'm just going to keep doing this, get those World Cup points, and 4 years and a few broken bones later, I got to compete in the Olympics.
It's an amazing story. So I have to ask you, how many broken bones have you counted?
Let's see. Broke my hand, my knee, my foot a couple times, a couple of ribs. My neck's a chiropractor's dream, because you pull 6 Gs on some of those curves. And if you enter a curve wrong, you get slammed with even more. And so a lot of neck injuries. But again, fortunately, I never messed up any ligaments or tendons, because those take a long time to heal. Broken bones, 40 days, no big deal.
I don't know if I would say no big deal, but we'll come back to the luge in a minute. But why don't you just ask, if you wouldn't mind, Ruben, just telling our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you're doing today.
Yeah, well, my name's Ruben Gonzalez. I'm a 4-time Olympian in the sport of luge, men's singles luge, going down basically the bobsled track. And ever since 2002, I've been a professional speaker. Kind of fell into the business, and a little kid asked me to be his show and tell project in school. Told my story to the kids, and the principal said, "Man, you're a gift. You got a gift." And so I've been blessed to get to speak for over 100 of the Fortune 500 companies in the last 15 years, and written several books, and they've gone bestseller and translated to lots of different languages. And it's everything I do is to try to share, pass the torch, share it with people what I had to do to make it to the Olympics, and how following those principles will help you reach your goals and dreams faster.
No, I think it's amazing what you've done both in the sport and outside the sport. And wanted to go back to just luge for a minute and ask you, we see it on TV, and it's not a sport that is all over the United States, obviously with different geographical limitations and things like that. But I wanted to ask you if you wouldn't mind just telling our listeners a little bit about exactly how fast you go down the track, because I think seeing it on TV is very different than actually experiencing it.
Yeah, well, when there's luge on TV, I change channels. But watching it live is amazing. If you're 3 feet away from a track, you see somebody zipping by at 80, 90 miles an hour. It's mind-blowing. Most tracks are 75, 80 miles an hour. Some of them are more technical than others. And the fastest track in the world is the one up in Whistler, Canada, the one that was used for the Vancouver Olympics. When we got there, they said, "Oh, by the way," and by the way, whenever you hear "by the way," you better brace yourself, because something bad's coming. They said, by the way, the engineers messed up. It's 95 miles an hour. And what are you going to do? You want to compete, you learn how to handle 95 miles an hour, and you do it. So that's the fastest.
That's amazing.
But it's not, it's not the most difficult. After a while, your mind gets used to that speed. But there's other tracks. There's a track in Germany, in Altenburg, Germany, used to be part of East Germany. It's a lot slower. It's about 75 miles an hour, but it has 4 spots where if you don't enter the curve at the right spot, there's no way you're coming out of that curve. And so you have to thread the needle 4 times. And to me, personally, that's a lot more stressful than just the speed.
Well, for me, they're both stressful. So I will allow you. I'll allow you to race, and I'll just watch from TV.
All right. Sounds like a deal.
So I wanted to ask you, Ruben, if you had to define yourself, but you could only use one word, what would that word be?
Perseverant. Bulldog.
I love it. That's a word that we often talk about on our show. And one of the things we also identify is the importance of a morning routine. And being a 4-time Olympian, wanted to ask you if you have a morning routine that you swear by.
Absolutely. I get up, I'll get some coffee, and I'll do some calisthenics, at least just to wake up my body. Some push-ups, some sit-ups. Actually, now at my age, my coaches have me doing mostly yoga type stuff to open up my hips and flexibility. And that doesn't have to take more than 30 minutes. Something that I won't do is check my emails or get into social media. I want to have my mind focused and clear on what I want to do. And so I'll write down my goal, and it doesn't have to be a dissertation. It can be one word, right? In my case, it's Beijing 2022. That's what I do, is focus on that goal. And so now I have a purpose for my day. And then whatever I have in my list, right? There's 2 or 3 things that I've listed from the night before. They're my most important tasks today. I'll tackle that. And I'll tackle one thing for 90 minutes. So I try to get a 90-minute chunk in with 0 interruptions, and then I take a break. And we homeschool our kids, so the break I might be go play with the kids or go outside. We live in Colorado, go for a walk or something, and then come back. And if I can get 3 or 4 of those 90-minute chunks in a day, I am very, very productive. And later on in the day, I'll check out those emails, because those are usually, very low priority things.
No, I think it's so important that you touched on that, and that's been a common theme, is the importance of starting off your day on your terms. And I think it's a good question because a lot of people have similar things that they do, but they're very specific on the other items that they do on their list. And you said something and wanted to just touch on it, is Beijing 2020. I know you have a goal yourself, but if you wouldn't mind just expanding on it a little bit for our listeners.
Sure. My first Olympics was Calgary, 1988, and then I did Albertville, 1992. So I did those two back to back, and then I quit. I wanted to do other things, and I didn't slide for 6 years. And my coach, who's this big Austrian guy that was he's kind of like the Michael Jordan of the sport. He called me after a 5-year break, and he said, "Hey, or 6 years." He says, "We got 5 years till Salt Lake City. I want you to come back." And I said, "Forget it, man. I'm done with luge." And he wouldn't take no for an answer. The guys, he keep calling me back. And so I said, "I'll tell you what. We got 5 years. If you'll train my brother too, he's got 5 years to do it, to learn. Maybe he can qualify too." And finally, he agreed. We both ended up making the Salt Lake City Games. And so that was 3 Winter Olympics in 3 different decades. And then I quit again. I'm kind of like a Brett Favre of luge. I get bored and I want to do other things. And so another 7 years went by. And then I got the itch again. I've got a weird 7-year itch, and I needed to do something big. And so I thought, hey, no one's ever done 4 Winter Olympics, each in a different decade. I'd be the first. And so I got back into it, and I qualified for Vancouver. And by then, in the old days, it was the top 50 in the world got to go. Then by Vancouver, it was the top 40. Now for Beijing, it's going to be the top 35. I mean, they keep making it harder and harder. And so last year, after another 7 years, it's funny, but that's how it is, I got the itch again, and I went to Calgary, which is a track that I know really well. And I just went for a couple of weeks. I just wanted to test it, see if my old body could still handle the G forces. And I was 55 last year. And I went, and I'm sliding better than ever. I'm mentally tougher. But they said, your starts, man, you start like a little girl. You can't even get yourself down to paddle and build up speed before curve 1. So that's why they had me doing yoga. And so, but now we're on a plan for Beijing 2022. If I make that one, it'll be 5 Olympics in 5 decades. I mean, that's crazy. No one's ever done that. And at 59, I would be the oldest Winter Olympian in any sport. And so that's definitely, that's Guinness Book of World Records stuff. And so that's what's exciting me these days.
That's amazing, and I commend you for doing what you're doing and having the mental capacity to go into it again. And I think it's interesting how you touched on the whole Brett Favre piece. Is athletes of all different ages and different sports, you have that itch inside of you, and you take time off and do different things. But so many different athletes have come back, and the NFL player Jason Witten took off last year, and he's coming back this year. So I think it's amazing, and I think at the age of 55 now, it's incredible, because when I look at and think of the Olympics, depending on the sport, you think of kids that are in their late teens, some kids that are in their mid-teens, but then think of it as 20s and 30s. So the concept that you're doing it at the age of 55 and will be 59 in 2022, it's amazing. So I wish you nothing but the best of luck. But it's incredible that you've continued to do it in 4 different Olympic decades, which is amazing.
Well, thanks, Chris. A couple of quick takeaways. My coaches say that it's all of that time that I took off. They said, you got a lot of years in the sport, but very few miles. You're like a car that's just been sitting in, a classic has just been sitting in the garage. And so that's part of what's allowing you to have this long career, right? But the other thing was that I was amazed when I went back to Calgary last year, and after those 2 weeks, I knew, hey, I'm back. After a couple of runs, I knew. And I came back a couple of months later, and I competed in a World Cup race with a 25-year-old sled. The coaches were saying, man, that's like playing Wimbledon with a wooden racket. I mean, that doesn't even make sense. And when I came back home, I felt this sense of purpose and this sense of centeredness and focus in my whole, in my life that I hadn't felt for years. And so that's what a big goal, that comes from your heart will do for you. It just helps align your whole life.
No, I could not agree more with that, and wanted to touch on the importance of, as you said, the mind, and wanted to ask you if you've read anything recently or if you're currently reading something you'd like to recommend to our listeners.
Gosh, there's so I'm sitting here in my office, and there's so many books. I just reread Ray Kroc's book about how he built McDonald's. It's called Grinding It Out, and that's a really good book, especially if you're an entrepreneur. You'll get some good stuff out of there. And then another one that I just read or reread is Gene Simmons, the guy from Kiss. Yeah, it's called Me Inc. MEINC, Me Inc. And he talks about how they built Kiss. And the guy is a businessman. And so I always like to learn from, I'm a good soldier. I always like to find the coach or the mentor or the person who's already done what I want to do, and I just follow in their footsteps.
Now, it's something we often talk about is the idea of a mentor and a coach, and I think it's important. And I've found that the most successful people in all different fields are the ones that look up to others and learn from them. And I think, obviously, you touched on Gene Simmons and Kiss being just a money machine, and obviously Ray Kroc invented McDonald's, which is, I believe, the number one restaurant chain in the entire world. So definitely two good books and two things to follow. Wanted to ask you, Ruben, if you could go back and give the 20-year-old version of yourself one piece of advice, what would that be?
Wow. I would, it probably would be not to listen to the naysayers. I mean, I've always made it a point to associate with people that I believed in, and disassociate with the naysayers. But I could always do it better. Just to give you a quick example, when I went to the Salt Lake City Olympics 2002, that's my third one, I was 39. And even back then, everybody was asking me if I was a coach. And so after about a week of hearing that, I started buying into it that, I guess this is my last one. I better really enjoy it. I better milk this, have a lot of fun. And little did I know that, I'd be doing one more at 47 in Vancouver. Everybody thought I was the coach's dad. And now, believe it or not, I'm actually older than most of the coaches now in the International Luge Circuit. And so when I competed in that World Cup race last year, I became the oldest person to ever compete at international level in the luge. And so all these limitations, if you start buying in to what other people say, limiting thoughts, they'll take you down. You have to be really careful with that stuff.
No, I think that's great advice, and I think it's something that we all need to focus a little more on, the people that bring you up as opposed to the people that bring you down. And if I could give you the opportunity to have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would you pick and why?
Oh my gosh, probably, geez. Right now, the name that pops up is George Patton. I would love to have met that guy, and Mandela as well, and both of them for the same reason. Their perseverance and their mental toughness and their willingness to stay the course when everybody was telling them that they were wrong. And I'd like to learn how to get better at that. Right? I'm a baby bulldog. I can always learn how to be the super bulldog. Mandela. What blows me about him is 27 years the guy's in jail, and he comes out, and rather than trying to chop heads of everybody, now he's in power. No, he brings them in. I mean, the guy's heart was amazing, and the capacity to be able to do that, right? To love his enemies like he did, just blows me away.
What do you think the one quality or the one characteristic that all successful athletes have?
Work ethic. I'd say you got to have a super work ethic. And you have to be coachable. I keep giving you two because there's lots there's lots of things, but you have to be coachable. There's so many athletes out there that are they're gifted, right? They're gifted athletically, but they try to make it just on their talent, and that's not enough. You have to outwork the competition.
No, I definitely, I love that, is outwork the competition. Speaking of quotes, I wanted to ask you, obviously you've been around at a professional level for a long time, but do you have an all-time favorite quote?
Patton, one of my favorites is Patton, and another one is Vince Lombardi. Patton, the one that I like is, if you're going through hell, keep going. Don't just stay there, just keep going. You're going to get through it, right? And the one from Vince Lombardi is, fatigue makes cowards of us all. I say that every time that I'm tired, had a bad night's sleep, or and I'm just not in the game, right? And I want to quit because it's amazing. When you're tired, you just want to quit. It takes all your fortitude away. I say that to myself, hey, this is just fatigue. Don't, after a good night's sleep, I'll know that I can take this problem on. So that helps me stay strong.
One of the things we often talk about at No Quit Living, both on the podcast as well as with our clients and teams, is the word accountability. And I wanted to ask you, as an Olympian, what does the word accountability mean to you?
Well, as I am accountable to my coaches, they know the way. They have much more experience than I ever had. And so my attitude is that I will humble myself to their leadership because they know it would be foolish to just try to do it on my own strength. And so that's what accountability means, being willing to humble yourself to somebody else's leadership, somebody that can take you further than you could go on your own.
So you briefly touched before about your professional speaking career, and I wanted to ask you, what's the best way for our listeners to find out a little bit more about you, or is there anything exciting that's coming out they can find out kind of a little bit more about what you do off of the Olympic circuit?
My Ruben Tips, RUBEN Tips, TIPS.com is a page where you can read articles and listen to watch videos, or even sign up for a newsletter if you like. But you can check it out before you actually sign up. And there's all kinds of free stuff. And if you go up to the top and you want to see some stuff about my speaking, you can just go up to the top and go there. RubenTips.com.
And are you active on social media as well?
Yes, I am. And it's always thelugeman.com, TheLugeman.com. You can find me. That's my handle on everything.
So one of the concepts we try to dive into is obviously with our mission of no quit and no quit living. It's the idea that people get knocked down and you have to get back up. It's the idea that people want to quit and want to give up. And I have to ask you, not only at your age, what you're trying to do on the Olympic level, but what is it that keeps you motivated every day? And what is it, your drive and your energy, that keeps you going, that maybe you could share some great advice or tips with our listeners?
Yeah, at the end of every luge run, especially the first few years, for me, in my case, it was the first 20 years. I white knuckled it for 20 years. I was scared to death because I started too late. Most guys start the luge when they're 10 years old, and little kids like that are bulletproof, and they work them up really slow, and over 10 years they get up to the top of the track. And so there's a walkie-talkie at the bottom, and you finish your run. And back in the old days, I was ready to quit after every single run because I was so scared. But there's a bunch of walkie-talkies down there, so you pick it up because there's coaches up and down the track. And I pick it up, and coach says, "Ruben, you must relax. Be one with the sled." And I tell him, "Man, how can I relax? I'm scared half to death." But he would tell me something: "You were too late out of curve 6, and put your head further back and point your toes." And I'd throw that walkie-talkie down, and I'd pace and rant. What does he know, right? And after a few seconds, my head would clear, and I said, he's right. I was late out of curve 6. That's why I was ping-ponging down that straightaway. Gosh, I got to get back on that sled. I got to get back on the sled. And finally, you get your head straight. But sometimes I'd have to walk up and down, giving myself a pep talk for 10, 15 minutes. And finally, I'd get back on the sled and do it again. And so, like I said before, life is just a series of storms, right? It's just like the weather, Think of every cold front as a storm. You're either in one right now, you're coming out of one, or you're going into one. And so, whenever you're going through life storms, don't try to figure it out on your own. Because when you're down, when you're depressed, when things aren't going your way, you'll always take the easy way out and you'll regret it later. Rather, pick up the walkie-talkie, pick up the phone, call your best friend, your best buddy, your mentor, right? Your husband, your wife, somebody that loves you, somebody that believes in you, and somebody get you back on that sled, somebody you can be accountable to, somebody get you, help you get back on track. Because if you quit on your dream, you just regret it all your life. You will.
That's great advice, and I loved how you tied it into your profession, because we all do things differently. And I think, as you said, is you pick up that walkie-talkie, and your first response was to, in some ways, throw it down. But then after you walked around for a couple minutes, you realized that, okay, I got to do this. So something that we look at is the idea and the concept of when some people face adversity, they give up and they throw in the towel. But for some reason, others don't, and they refuse to quit. Do you think it's something that you're born with, something that's ingrained to you, or do you think it's something that people can learn throughout their life?
No, I think it's a muscle. It's just like a muscle that you can strengthen. Aristotle said, you become what you repeatedly do. You become what you repeatedly do. And so if you quit all the time, quitting becomes a bad habit, and you just become a quitter. But if you want to increase your perseverance, then and increase your strength, right? Your mental strength. Then look for challenges, right? And they don't have to be huge challenges. Maybe the next time you go to the restaurant, if you're always waiting to see what everybody else is going to order, all your friends, right? Because everybody waits to see what everybody else is going to order to make it a safe decision. So dumb. Well, make it a point that, hey, you're going to be the first one, and you're going to order. And it's funny, everybody started ordering what you ordered. and so if you do that, now you faced your fear, right? So you have one victory and fear has 0, right? The scoreboard is 1 to 0. And maybe next time you're at you're somewhere where you could possibly ask a question. Well, and you might be afraid to ask the question because you feel you might look dumb in front of everybody. No, just go ahead and ask the question. If you do it, you just became more courageous, right? Now it's 2 to 0. And see, the important thing to realize is that you just had 2 personal victories, but it's going to take many, 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 many personal victories before you can have a public victory, because it takes a while, right, to strengthen that muscle. But then one day you're able to do something really big, and people are amazed that you can do it. Well, it's because you've been strengthening that muscle over months and years.
No, I appreciate you expanding on that. And then one of the things that we find is with social media today, it's really easy to follow different people, both professionally, people that we look up to. I was curious if there's anybody that you look up to, and if so, why?
I'll be honest, I don't use the social. I'm in social media. I hardly ever check it unless I have to post something, because I am so focused on doing those daily tasks that'll get me closer to Beijing 2022 that I just don't even read it that much. I did for a while, and I found that it just distracted me, and it made it harder for me to focus, for those 90-minute chunks. It almost took my focus away. And so I'm a reader. I've been a voracious reader ever since I was a little kid. When I was really small, I read all the Jules Verne books, right? Around the World in 80 Days and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and all these books about kids that led adventurous lives. And I wanted to be, I would tell my friends, I want my life to be like a book. And then my dad got me to read biographies. He said, look, if you'll study the lives of great people, you'll figure out what it takes, right? And so he encouraged me to do that. And then when I was in high school, actually in college, our soccer coach, the first time we had a meeting as a team, he brings out this book, a box full of books, and it was How to Win Friends and Influence People. And he gave us each a copy, and he said, this book will read your life. It will change your life. And when I read it, I was blown away. That was the first personal development book I read. I thought, oh my gosh, this is like 100 biographies, because it's all the tips, concentrated. And that opened up a whole new world, right? Think and Grow Rich, and How to Win Friends and Influence People, and all these books. And they always reference another book, right? Whenever you read these books, he references somebody else. So I'd get that one, and that guy might reference a book that was written 50 years before. And boy, I just became a student of success, because I realized that the better I am, the better my results will be. And Zig Ziglar, over the years, I got to share the stage with Zig over 25 times in huge arenas, and I learned so much from him. But one of his famous sayings was, you have to be before you can do, and you have to do before you can have. And so you have to sharpen the saw, you better yourself so you can do more things. And if you do those things over and over, massive action, like Tony Robbins says, then you start getting results. And you know what happens after that? People start calling you lucky. Oh yeah, I'm lucky that I that I worked on myself. That's why I'm lucky.
No, that's amazing advice, and Zig was an amazing person, and I got the opportunity to interview his son Tom. Maybe a difficult question for you, but do you have a favorite book of all time?
Yeah, I'm an introvert. You'd never think somebody like I fell into this business. Yeah, I didn't plan to be in the speaking business. Still, one of my favorites is How to Win Friends and Influence People. And then the other two are Think and Grow Rich and The Magic of Thinking Big. All three really old books.
3 great books.
It's funny. Yeah, a lot of the old books, like pre-1960, all of those books, they tended to talk about how to develop yourself as a person from how to develop from character. How do you develop your character, right? And after the 60s, there was a period of time that all these books started coming out with, looking for the shortcut. Well, the shortcut is developing your character. It really is.
No, I'm so glad you just touched on that, because I truly believe in personal development, trying to become a better version of yourself. And you said something that was very interesting, is of all the books that I read, and I myself am a voracious reader, so many of the books that I love, the author or authors will talk about other books, or they'll reference other books or other people. And what I end up doing is I end up taking notes, and then I almost find myself putting together a list of my next couple books. But what you also said is that there are no shortcuts. Sometimes things happen quicker today because of technology. But if you look at the most successful companies, look at the most successful individuals, athletes, Olympians, they're all people that spent inordinate amount of time perfecting their craft behind closed doors when no one was looking, and many times, as you know, when it's still dark out in the morning and when it's still dark out late at night when people are sleeping. So wanted to ask you, Ruben, truly appreciate you being here. We could obviously spend a lot of time talking on a lot of different things, but I wanted to ask if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners.
I would just I guess I would tell people that, look, I was always the last kid picked for PE. I mean, I was on the bench for kickball. No joke, okay? It's not false modesty. I got a lot of heart, but I was a slowpoke, so I never got picked. And I didn't take up the sport of luge till I was 21. I lived in hot and humid Houston, Texas. So if somebody like me can make it to the Olympics even one time, coming from that, then you guys can do anything. You really can. Don't buy into whenever you come across somebody that tells you you can't do something, you know what just happened? You just ran into somebody that doesn't believe as much as you do. Disassociate from that person and associate with the people that'll help you get there. That's great advice and great parting words. And I need to tell you, just appreciate you sharing what you did today. And I'm so impressed by what you've done. But more importantly, wanted to wish you continued success and best of luck heading towards Beijing 2022. Thanks, Christopher. Make it an Olympic day.
Thank you for listening to episode number 197. Ruben Gonzalez is quite an impressive individual that is still competing for the Olympics in his mid-50s. Ruben shared some truly interesting things with us today, and I would like to briefly touch upon a few. As he was building, learning, and growing his luge career, Ruben mentioned that at the end of almost every single run, he was ready to quit. The speed, challenge, and needing to consistently get better all the time, Ruben faced his fair share of reasons why, but he never quit. Instead, he always competed, gave it his best, and 4 Olympics later, he is aiming for making the 2022 Olympics and competing once again, and this time it would be in his 5th decade. Ruben spoke about how life is a series of storms that come at us just like the weather, and how we shouldn't try to figure it all out on our own. The advice he would have given himself at the age of 20 was spot on. He suggested that we don't listen to those naysayers or those negative people. As we conclude with today's episode, I would like to share a quote by the famous Jim Rohn. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. My question to you, if you pick up your phone, who are those 5 people for you? Which 5 people do you spend most of your time with, on, and or communicating? Look at your text, your emails, and your most recent calls. Do those 5 people keep you where you are, status quo? Possibly do they bring you down? Or perhaps, instead, they inspire, motivate, challenge, and push you to become your very best. As you go for your greatness today, I challenge you to challenge yourself. Push past your comfort zone and don't quit. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.